right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the very first episode of the Teachers Edition show and soon to be podcast. You can tune in with the Collective Memphis via Facebook on our live show every first Sunday of the month, starting at this day and this particular time from 6 o'clock to 7:30 p.m. Tonight, we will be focusing on school re-entry and standardized testing during a global pandemic. To help us facilitate this much needed conversation, we have with us two very distinguished guests on tonight. First up, we have the one and only Mr. Bibbs, who is the Chief of Staff at Teach for America and SES School Board member and chairwoman of the largest school district in the state of Tennessee. We also have Shelby County Commissioner Michael Whaley, who was Vice Chair of the Education Committee and Director of Leadership for Educational Equity, also known as LEE. Lastly, we will be recognizing our Principals List recipient, Mr. Brennan Steele, who is the founder and CEO of Breathe Brother Movement. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is James Johnson, and I have the pleasure and honor of serving as your host on tonight. So my job is to give you the inside scoop and add just a little bit of spice to it. Brittany, hey.
Hey, James.
How's it going?
I'm your co-host, Brittany Batson, where I will be serving up all the latest and hottest topics on the table in education.
All right. Thank you, Brittany. And our vision for the Teachers Edition show is to encourage alliances to create positive outcomes for students, parents, and teachers. Through this show, our primary aim is to initiate critical conversations that explore all aspects of K-12 education.
Yes, James, let's speak that into existence. We also want to acknowledge and thank each of you for coming out tonight. We recognize that you could be doing anything this Sunday evening, but you decided to join us, and for that, we're extremely humbled and grateful. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and click, like, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, and make sure that you are following us at the Collective Mem and at the Teachers Edition on Facebook and IG. We have some awesome prizes to give out tonight, guys, but you have to be locked in order to win. So, James, what are some awesome prizes that we're giving away tonight?
Well, you know, people always love prizes and swag. So, unfortunately, I don't have any money because folks like, we give away gift cards. Now we don't have money. Let's check on the way. But what we are giving out tonight, we have some lovely TFA swag. So, we have some water bottles. Yes. Quench that thirst. We also have some stunner shades. You know, spring is coming, summer is approaching. Protect the eyes. We also, now everybody loves t-shirts. We have some t-shirts that we're going to be giving out as well. Lovely t-shirts. We have some books. Where do we go from here? Still relevant today in 2021. And then we also have some tablets that we're giving out as well. So 3 lucky winners. Yeah, okay. You know, we try to do it a little big for the people that tune in. So for those who are joining, like Brittany said, make sure to click like, click share, follow us on Instagram and Facebook in order to be eligible for some of the prizes tonight.
Yes. So James, it sounds like we are ready to get this party started. Tell us what's first up on the agenda.
So first up on the agenda today, we have morning announcements in the evening. So first up, we're going to talk about federal news. Okay, y'all hear the bell. Time to get in class. Class is in session. So unless you've literally been living under a rock, especially if you are in the field of education, we know that last week, the United States confirmed Miguel Cardona as the new Secretary of Education. Now, Cardona is the total opposite of Betsy DeVos, so it's going to be very interesting to see how he will leverage his personal experience as a public school teacher, principal, and also commissioner of education for Connecticut in his new role. So, Brittany, that's going to be very interesting.
It is interesting indeed, James. Also, so with him having this new role, his experience is really going to be essential to addressing school enrollment and attendance issues.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know, funding and budget cuts are based on student head counts. And right now, it's not looking good. Across the U.S., public school enrollment has taken a dip due to parents electing for alternative school solutions and options for their students due to this pandemic. And although many public schools across the U.S. have returned to in-person learning, several parents have still selected to have their students remain virtual due to safety concerns. And with millions having decided to remain virtual, learning loss is disproportionately affecting our Black and Latinx students today.
Absolutely. So next up with morning announcements, we have state news. So in January's special session on education in our Tennessee state legislature, three notable bills were passed. So the first was on accountability, and it established how testing would impact schools and our teachers. So this literally requires 80% of students to take on an in-person standardized test. Now, how that's going to work and how that's going to happen when the majority of parents selected virtual learning, I'm not really sure exactly how that's going to work, but we're going to dig a little deeper when we head to the Teachers Lounge to really discuss that, because that's going to be interesting for a lot of people.
Yes, I can't wait for that deep dive.
Yes.
So the second bill passed during the special session in January really addressed learning loss, which requires districts to now provide summer learning opportunities for their students as well as tutoring. And this last Tennessee bill that was passed was the Literacy Success Act, which requires schools to put a laser-like focus on phonics-based instruction for our K through third grade classrooms.
Absolutely. And then on the state level, the last piece of news. So a lot of you have heard, or if you have not heard, there's a new Tennessee bill moving quickly through the House of Representatives, which require districts to outline policies that teachers may use to remove students from the class. Now, these policies give teachers wide range of freedom to interpret and address behaviors deemed as disorderly conduct or defiant, which groups say, such as the Tennessee Disability Coalition, it will severely impact students with disabilities and students of color, furthering the prison to school pipeline. So yeah, that's going to be interesting.
It is. That's deep. And so finally, on a local level, what I'm sure is that the top of many of our listeners, at the top of their minds is this transition to in-school learning.
Yes.
And so as a result of the Tennessee legislation that we've all know was supported by the governor, SCS schools were forced to return to in-person learning, or their funding could have been threatened to be cut. So although teachers have mixed feelings about this return, last week Shelby County Schools did welcome back more than 17,000 elementary students, which is about 1/3 of the district. And on tomorrow, Monday, March the 8th, we know that our middle and high school students will be scheduled to return to in-person learning as well.
Yes. And lastly, Brittany, in local news, so in hopeful news, SBS officials just unveiled a 2-year, $170 million plan. Now, that's a lot of money. I can do a lot of things with that. But they released this $170 million plan to board members on how to potentially spend the second round of federal relief money to address the pandemic disruption, including mental health centers, teacher assistance, and also building ventilation. So, with that being said, I know that those of you who are interested, we will link all of these articles and links to a monthly newsletter. So if you can leave your email address in the comment section, we will make sure that you actually get the newsletter each month. Now it's time for the great debate. Brittany, can you give us a snapshot of what to expect with this segment?
Yes, James, it is now time for the great debate. So for those of you just now tuning in, let's get ready to rumble.
Yes.
We're talking teacher evaluations during a global pandemic. To have or not to have is the question. So do you think that teachers should be evaluated during virtual or hybrid learning? Woo! This is going to be juicy.
Mm-hmm.
So, James, what are your initial thoughts that come to mind when you think about teacher evaluations this year?
Well, for me, I think that teachers have done just an amazing job in terms of being resilient and really, from the start of last year in March, picking up where they left off. You know, kids were, going into spring break in March, and people thought that we would be back in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but it ended up being the rest of the school year. So teachers have done an amazing job just adjusting with the shifts and really pivoting to what is actually needed. My personal opinion in terms of teacher evaluations is kind of complicated, but it's one that for a lot of folks, they feel this way and they feel that it should not count this year. Personally, I don't feel like teachers should have additional stress than what they already have. We have asked teachers literally to build a plane and fly it at the same time. And then on top of that, we're saying, hey, we're going to evaluate you based on how well your plane takes off, how high it goes, and then how well you're able to land at the end, having just built the plane. So for me, I think that the focus should actually be on teacher feedback and also development. When we think of teacher evaluations, we know that student standardized test data is included in their metrics. And a lot of teachers are like, wait a minute, there's a lot of things that I don't have control over. I don't have control over attendance. Attendance has been a huge issue for not just schools in Memphis, but schools throughout the entire country. So how are we going to hold teachers accountable for evaluation rubrics and their performance when there are things that they have no control over that is literally having an impact on the way they deliver instruction and also how students receive instruction? So attendance is a big thing. You also have students who have, tech issues in their home. Like I know our district and SES and several other local charter districts gave students one-to-one devices. But how do you confront the internet issues, connectivity issues? How do you confront different situations that are going on in people's homes that might prevent students from wanting to turn on their camera, from wanting to engage how they typically would as it relates to just being engaged and wanting to be focused? I know like in the fall, a lot of folks were like, kids need to turn on their camera. Well, you don't know what's going on in people's house, so they may not have their camera on because if they have 3 or 4 siblings, who wants to be in the same room hearing their, siblings class going on at the same time and, trying not to have the echo and all of that. So they may want to be in their room where it's quiet and it's comfortable. So many things on my mind. So my personal opinion, my first thought is around what does it look like to support teachers developmentally and also feedback wise, because we should be helping teachers grow, not making the system punitive as it would have been in previous years. So those are my initial thoughts. So Brittany, what about you? What are your thoughts on the teacher evaluation process?
Man, yeah, I definitely agree with you, James. My first thought is also what I tell many teachers is to focus on your locus. We have to be able to just to focus on what is within our locus of control. And so, because you're so right, there are so many elements that are outside of our scope and our reach that teachers feel like they're being evaluated or judged or looked negatively upon based on those things that are outside of their reach. And so that's my first thought. I definitely agree with you on that. Also, my first thought is that many of the evaluation tools and rubrics that we're currently using aren't aligned to remote learning. And so teachers are being evaluated remotely, being a remote teacher, virtual teacher, hybrid teacher, using scales and rubrics that were meant for in-person learning only. And so I think that's really unfair for teachers to be evaluated using those. And then also, I just think that when schools decided to begin remote learning, there should have been a virtual observation tool that also included a social and emotional learning aspect.
Yes.
And so the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, they define social and emotional learning as children and adults learn to establish and understand and manage emotions, set goals, show empathy for others, establish positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. And I think that that's one of the biggest pieces that's missing is that empathy piece. I do understand accountability, and I understand that teachers have to be held accountable as in any profession. But I don't think that empathy piece has really been extended to teachers. I know we talk a lot about grace and extended grace. I do think in certain aspects, there's leniency with that, and teachers are extended that grace. But when it comes to evaluations, it's like grace is off the table. Like, we're still going to come in and evaluate you. So I honestly think that's a little bit unfair. So that's just my first initial thought when it comes to that. I think that social and emotional piece has to be one that really needs to be put on the table and evaluated, especially if we're going to continue in this virtual hybrid type of setting.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. And I was looking at some research from the National Council on Teacher Quality. And a lot of states have given guidance to school districts. A majority have not. But I like how they had a report and they talked about how Colorado and Ohio will not incorporate student growth data in the teacher evaluation process, which I think is definitely commendable because the data has been skewed. Even districts who have administered common assessment data, whether it's MAP or NWEA, well, same thing, or already assessments in the fall. A lot of those students took those exams remotely. So there's a question of validity. Are these tests valid? Can we even use those district assessments that were issued by different LEAs to really gauge where students were in the spring with learning loss? So I do like how Colorado and Ohio will not incorporate that. Now, you talked about student emotional learning and student engagement measures. According to this same report, Connecticut and Ohio are actually taking that into account for their overall academic measures instead of that actual student growth. You have Massachusetts, who has also streamlined and changed different metrics as it relates to student growth. And even New Jersey and Hawaii, they have said that they will continue to have alternatives path for different districts, giving those districts some autonomy to address the shift and provide some sort of fairness for those teachers and those students, because we are still in a pandemic, and I think sometimes people actually forget about that. So
definitely. And my final thought with that, you're right, there's just so much going on. I feel like there's so much loss around us, but I believe that the loss must be prioritized. So when we think about loss of loved ones, friends, having to deal with the loss of maybe your income, and then finally learning loss, right? So for teachers, I feel like right now teachers are really prioritizing in that order: loss of loved ones, loss of friends, loss of income, and then loss of learning. So it's not that it's not at the forefront of their mind. It's just that they're prioritizing those things that are all valuable and equally important.
Yes.
Yeah. Whew, well, that was a lot, and I know we can go on.
For days, because it's a lot to talk about. So, and of course, we know that these conversations are going to be ongoing, but these are discussions that need to be had in a public forum so that people who aren't in education can help make a difference. So I know we're going to continue these conversations to get into the People's Lounge.
Definitely. All right. Well, I think it's time for the bell, which means that can only mean one thing, James, which is what?
It's time to go to the Teachers Lounge. So, hey, I don't know about you all, but if you don't know, the Teachers Lounge is literally where it goes down, okay? Nothing is off topic. Nothing is off the table. And tonight we're going to chew up these topics, and we're going to talk about everything, because we need to make sure that not just teachers and folks in education are informed, but we need to make sure that the folks on the outside are just as informed as well, so that we all can make a difference within our community, because our kids deserve it. So for tonight in our Teachers Lounge, so for those of you in education, today's objective. So today we have two objectives that we're going to be talking about on tonight. And those objectives are the following: school reentry and standardized testing during a global pandemic. So I'm going to get ready to introduce our guests. We have, like I said at the very beginning, two very distinguished guests who are going to be joining us on tonight. So our very first guest that we have on tonight, we have Miss Miska Bibbs, who is the Shelby County Board Chairwoman of the largest school district in the state of Tennessee, and she is also the Chief of Staff for Teach for America. Ladies and gentlemen, show some love for Miss Miska Bibbs. All right, and next up, joining us tonight in the Teachers Lounge, we have none other than Mr. Michael Whaley, who is the Shelby County Commissioner. He's also the Vice Chairman of the Education Committee and the Director of Leadership for Educational Equity. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in our audience tonight, y'all show some love for Mr. Michael Whaley. All right, Brittany, it's all yours.
All right, so we are first going to begin with Michael. So Michael, if you can just tell everyone a little bit about yourself, anything you want our audience to know about you.
Yeah, thanks, Brittany. Thanks, James, for having me. First, I have to say, I feel like I'm on network TV right now. This is one heck of a production, so kudos. This is awesome. I'm just happy to be here. So I'm Michael Whaley. I serve as the Director of Regional Impact for Leadership for Educational Equity in Memphis, and I know there's a lot of really awesome active LEA members who are watching tonight, so thanks for taking the time to join us. I was part of the original charter corps in Memphis in 2006. So when we first started a TFA region in Memphis, came here by way of Dallas and never left. So ended up starting Memphis College Prep before launching LEA in Memphis in 2016, and then in 2018 was elected to the Shelby County Commission. And so in my day job working with LEA, I really love the opportunity to work with many of the lead members that are here today and others in Memphis and developing their civic leadership. And so really we work to try to help equip our members with the skills and knowledge and tools and connect them with the opportunities to really launch their own potential and develop their leadership in organizing, policy, advocacy, elected leadership. And so always appreciate opportunities like this to talk about ways in which members can make an impact in our community. So thanks again for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you. And next up we have Miss Miska. Miska, can you tell the audience a little bit more about yourself? Thank you so much for joining us.
That's such a loaded question, but I just started off. Well, first, I agree with Michael that this is quite a production. I'm super proud to be able to be on here tonight. I've enjoyed the flow so far. Number one, I'm a parent. I am actually have a first semester freshman that I'm actually right now in Nashville, making sure that he is set up correctly on campus at Tennessee State University. So I view everything I do education-wise from a parental point of view, and also being a parent of a young Black man. Education work, I always say education chose me. It is not exactly what I went to school for, but I remember graduating and my mom telling me, did you choose one of the jobs? I'm a Hampton University graduate. My mom really saying to me, okay, hey, did you make a decision on, what you're going to do regarding your jobs? I told her, yes, I did. I decided not to choose either one of those. I'm coming home because I think I'm going to work on a congressional campaign. Her first words were, of course, people in my house have to work. I hope it works out for you. But that's how education chose me. I worked for a congressman for 4 years where education and workforce development was his primary committee. I was assigned to support him on that. And from that's all she wrote. I really just saw the inequities in education from where then at that point, it wasn't really about accountability, but it was more so around like facilities and resources. So I just saw a lot of the inequities in Shelby County at that point in time. And it seems like everything I've done has been in advocacy, community development, and additional resources around education. I am definitely proud to be the Shelby County Schools Board Chair, and more importantly, I'm proud to represent District 7, which is actually the community that raised me. From every piece of it, from where my grandparents lived on both sides of my parents to where my parents grew up to where I grew up. So there's not much about District 7 that I can't tell you about because I've lived it from every piece of the district. And I think that's enough. I could go on and on about education, but that's me.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys both for joining us tonight. And so we are going to kick it into high gear, James. Over to you.
All right. Let's go ahead and dive right in. So we are in the Teachers Lounge. So like I said, in the Teachers Lounge, everything goes down. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into our first topic, which is around in-person learning. So my first set of questions is going to go to our lovely chairwoman, Miska Bibbs over Shelby County Schools, I just love the largest school district doing some great things for our city. So the first question that I have for you is, so everyone knows SES ushered in more than 17,000 elementary students last week. And, a lot of the teachers that I spoke with were very excited to see their students. Most of those teachers hadn't seen their students in a year. So my first question is, what were some wins for that in-person return that took place last week?
Mm-hmm. Great question, James. I really believe that some of the wins were the fact that principals were ready for their buildings. I did a check-in with just about every principal in my district, and their plans were vetted from when the person walked outside on the sidewalk to when they got in the classroom to the end of the day, how they got back home. So I'm very proud of the fact that principals really vetted their plans. Definitely was a win. And I also believe I heard from a few parents who were pleasantly surprised. So that to me was also a win. And I just think, it went far better than what I will say this as someone who was not on the side of supporting reentry, because I'm a strong believer that community-wide, most of my parents were saying no, that they weren't ready to go back. So that I'm an advocate for my parents, for my community. But when parents called me who decided to go in, who were initially felt like that they weren't ready to go in, said that they were okay, that was all I needed to hear.
That's excellent. Well, I'm glad because, it's a lot of the times it's just always on the negative, and, there's a lot of stress out there on all ends, right? Whether it's, the school leaders, the teachers, the students, and even the parents. But I'm glad that a lot of these positive wins have been elevated just through what you've shared and just throughout the media, because there's a lot to look forward to. And to that end, I do want to ask, I know next week we're going to be ushering in our middle school and high school students for SES, but I did want to have the opportunity to just raise a few concerns that some teachers had from this past week. So I did have an opportunity to talk with several teachers, and although we did have a lot of great wins, there were some pain points throughout the week. So teachers talked about just inconsistency with technology. There was a lot of technology that was rolling in and out. Kids weren't able to log on. Teachers weren't able to teach students. You also had issues with students who at first had elected to remain virtually throughout the year. At first the district said, hey, we're going to allow you to choose. You can either choose in-person learning. It's going to be like that for the rest of the year, or you can do virtual learning. Well, that decision was changed, and I believe given to the school-based schools to really make that decision and change that. So a lot of teachers were saying it was really stressful that decision has been changed, because, if schools anticipated for X amount of students to come, a lot of parents were changing their mind throughout the week, and they weren't really able to provide the safety precautions necessary to accommodate the shift. So you have internet issues, the students, going back and forth with their decision. And so can you address those two questions? And what are some things, in addition to those two concerns, that you guys are working on to ensure that our middle school and high school students have a smooth transition tomorrow?
Excellent point around technology. Ever since we went to a virtual world, the reality of it is Memphis is not set up strongly regarding our tech world. I think that's one of the first things that I mentioned as
I think you're on
not
mute.
only just for right now. Okay. There we go. Okay. That as long as we move into this virtual environment, that the city infrastructure has to be stronger, because it's not, we provided hotspots, but the reality of it is our buildings are old. When you have everyone inside of a building, and not only students, teachers, and then you talk about a network and a whole community where people are all online, definitely there are going to be some tech issues. So that is one of my favorite conversations. But, I'm looking forward to some of our city leaderships on the county commission and the city council, as well as both our mayors, to have those real conversations about how do we build a better technology infrastructure as we move forward to really support education in the city. I do think the other part you mentioned, James, about a rolling opportunity for parents to decide to go in or not. I think the original thought was that parents who were saying that they wanted to remain virtual, that they wanted to see it happen first and before they could trust the process, and then giving them the opportunity to go in person. I definitely understand how that shifts a lot around what not only just the principal, but the teacher. And then you think about everyone in the building has to change what they do regarding safety. So I agree with that. That's actually is a question that I'm going to bring up around. At some point, we're going to have to decide on saying that this is the absolute last date versus rolling, because I don't think you can be successful with it rolling, because if that's the case, then I as a parent then can say, hey, well, you know what? May 1st is hit and my, things have changed for me. I'm going to go ahead and send you back in the building. And then what if all parents at that point in time, and I get things happen. And what I've noticed is if there's something that is an absolute issue, sure, you can have a conversation with your principal about it. And I'm sure he or she will make the right decision to help you. But you can't have thousands of families still making that decision at such a late date in order to be successful. So that is definitely on my mind. Not only have you brought it up, but there have been definitely other teachers as well as other administrators that have said this can be a problem.
Excellent. And I'm glad that as a school board member, that's something that you're going to be elevating to the rest of the board and also just our district officials, because we want to make sure, first of all, the year is stressful and it's one that is completely unprecedented. But I do like the fact that you're taking this feedback and the concerns of our teachers and school leaders and also our community into consideration so that we can make sure that we're providing the best customer service for all of our students and those involved in the process. So thank you for that. And I'm glad that that's going to be bubbled up. To go along the lines of that same question. So recently in the news, Shelby County officials unveiled a 2-year, $170 million plan. You know what I can do with $170 million? We can do a lot with that, okay? So, but district officials unveiled a $170 million plan to board members, such as you, offering a first look at how Tennessee's largest district, which is in Memphis, SES, will spend that second round of stimulus relief money. So my question to you, Miska, is what are some ways the district is going to invest that money and spend that money now that it has been approved?
Well, I do want to make everyone aware that although they did reveal that to us, the board also gave a lot of feedback on things that we liked and what we would like to see. So this is not final. So I know oftentimes you read an article, you hear a headline, and people think that it is final at that point in time. We actually have a couple before we decide on making it final. I would definitely say the highlights for us as a board is definitely the mental health aspect of it. That is something that we've been really pushing since day one of saying that we would be virtual. So that part is it. And then the other thing is when we come to the buildings and ventilation and making sure if we can use as much as that money to be able to use for that. And one of the key things we said as a board is to make sure that it's equitable. You know, the reality of it is we're largest, but most of our buildings are extremely old. And when you're dealing with old buildings, there's just a lot of work to do it. Hence how, we start having the conversations around how do you consolidate buildings in order to be able to, make sure which one is better than the other. These conversations, those conversations have been put to the side because we've been dealing with the pandemic, but it still doesn't change the fact that these buildings are really old. So hence one of the reasons why safety is such a big issue. The other thing that I think is really important is being able to support some of the things we're currently doing, but just heighten at a level around literacy. And, and I think it's interesting. I loved how you did your state news report around a lot of what they're doing. But yes, Memphis is also the largest, but we're also we're in most cases the most disrespected school district. They do combine us often with Metro Nashville, but their numbers look a lot different from us. And Memphis often, Shelby has to really fight our own fights, and it's unfortunate. So, we put up a lot of fights. We push real hard. Sometimes that ends in actual lawsuits. When I think about vouchers, I think about funding, all those things. So, we know that a lot that happens to us may not necessarily be the fairest to Shelby, but we're going to do our best to be able to be reactive with that. The other thing that I think, as you mentioned around the presentation, was also being able to use some of these dollars to help support some of the students around things that they missed in athletics, things that they missed in the arts due to the pandemic. And we're trying to figure out how the ESSER dollars can be used for that, because we also want to support them through that process, especially the class of 2021.
Thank you so much for sharing. So I'm sure that a lot of teachers are definitely going to be happy. I know you guys are still working through, and I know you said you guys gave some feedback around the plan, but I know mental health is a top priority for so many people, not just for our children, but our teachers and employees as well. Like, we have to make sure that the social and emotional welfare of our teachers, our staff, and our students is at the forefront. I love how that's brought up, because that's going to be a game changer, not just this year, but beyond and moving forward, because its implications are real. And in terms of the building and the infrastructure, I know that's a conversation that folks are kind of having it back of their head.
We've all suffered trauma through this pandemic.
We have in the buildings. And so those are definitely conversations that we're going to have in the future. And then the last question as it relates to in-person learning. So this is the $1 million question. So this is the question that a lot of teachers said, James, I need you to ask this question. And I said, I'm going to do my best. Now, I don't control the answers, but I'm going to definitely ask the question. So the question is this. So will the district return to fully in-person learning or a hybrid model this upcoming school year? So that's the question that's on a lot of people's mind. Is virtual learning here to stay in some components? Will there be asynchronous learning and synchronous learning in the future? What is the future as it relates to hybrid learning? What's the future?
James. So I wish I had the actual final answer for everyone, but I will lead with this in saying that this is actually a community question. The reality of it is, if we need for people to still understand that they must be safe at all times, the more that we act as a community around making sure we wear a mask, wash our hands, continue to social distance, and do all those things to remain safe in order for our COVID numbers stay minimal, then we would be able to make the best answer. As we all know, is that of course our funding was being pushed differently based upon having to do in-person learning. So we know that there's going to be some type of in-person learning, but the reality of it is, if the numbers skyrocket again, then there would be something that we would have to do differently all over again, because our main thing is we want to keep people safe. And right now, the numbers still are kind of teetering around 80s to 100 as far as new cases. So that's around what they were in March. Those numbers around the same kind of in March, or a little bit under when we decided to go to virtual, kind of, being at home. So as long as we can stay around that, then in-person learning, I think, will be okay. But and that's us as a community decided that we are going to do our part in order to stay safe.
All right. Thank you so much.
Don't have an answer yet, but it is in the works.
Well, all right. Well, so community members, make sure you do your part. Wash your hands, socially distance, wear a mask in large crowds. Take all of those universal precautions that the CDC has recommended so that we can get back to some normalcy. But, like she said, she didn't get to that answer around if we still going to have a hybrid model of virtual learning. But I think the future is definitely going to lend itself to that answer. And personally, I feel like it's going to be here to stay. But like I said, we'll see what it looks like in the future. So who knows? So Brittany, kicking it over to you.
Yes, thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
That was very, thank you for your thought-provoking responses, Miska. That was really good. So now I'm going to turn it to Michael. And so Michael, I have a few questions for you. So my first question is, in your role as the Director of Leadership for Education Equity, we know that your mission is focused on ending injustices and inequities in schools. A Tennessee bill that could empower teachers to remove students with chronic discipline problems from their classrooms is moving quickly through the House of Representatives. But it also raises concerns that it might disproportionately affect those students of color or students with disabilities. We know that decades of research have shown us that schools disproportionately discipline students who are Black or who have special needs. So in your opinion, do you believe that this bill will reach its intended impact, or will it continue to perpetuate the school to prison pipeline?
Brittany, that's a great question. First I'll say, Lee's mission is really to empower our members to get involved and to take action. And so we never tell them like, this is the way you need to feel about something, or this is what you need to advocate for. That it's really a bet on leadership of our members to lean into the positions that they feel most impacted by and most passionate about, and to take that action. And so I think this is a great example of so all that said, this is a great example of why it's so important to be engaged in these conversations at the local and state level. There's so much education policy and things that ultimately impact your classrooms and your schools that are decided by non-educators and people who have never spent time in your schools. And so if nothing else, it's incumbent, I think, upon educators and parents and students and advocates to share what their real experiences are and like what the nuances are of something like this with state lawmakers. So all that said, I think, personally, my take on that is that you've got to be, I think, really clear about what problem you're trying to solve. That it's that just saying, well, let's just remove students from the classroom who are causing disruptions and let someone else take care of that. I'm not so sure that actually supports the students and, by association, the teacher in what really needs to be there. And one of the things that immediately comes to my mind is instead of thinking about kind of systems for reactionary or or punitive action. How do we really ensure that we're being more proactive around supporting both the physical and emotional health of students, mental health of students and teachers? I think the point earlier about like adult health and support is arguably just as, if not more important. So I think those are the things that I would be more interested in seeing to address what often manifests itself as a student, student misbehavior in the classroom. But I also understand, having been an educator and a school leader, like things happen in the moment, and teachers need to know how to address it. And so part of that is, again, I think training, like how we're supporting teachers in addressing situations like that. But it's also having the personnel and the staff that can help you through circumstances like that, instead of just sending a student to the principal's office, which, again, my personal opinion is I'm not sure that that's the most productive path. It's actually going to solve the problem that I think they are trying to solve here. And I think you can make a really good argument that something like this could, whether intended or not, could perpetuate the school to prison pipeline and disproportionately affect students of color and students from lower income communities to no fault of their own. And that's something I think we've got to be conscious about and make sure those voices are being heard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with everything you said, Michael. And I agree that open and honest communication and dialogue with those lawmakers on the local and state level is absolutely necessary. Because you're right, a lot of times they don't know what's going on in our schools. And so I definitely think that open and honest dialogue is key. Thank you so much. All right, so to our next question. So with millions of students still learning remotely, the learning losses are piling up. I think everyone knows that. But some school districts are reporting a higher level of failing grades this year. And with many districts now having returned to in-person learning, but many students are still virtual, teachers are being asked to teach simultaneously to students in person and virtual. So that hybrid level of learning. And so many teachers are stating that they either don't have the skill set or the technology, such as multiple devices, in order to truly deliver high quality instruction to students. So in your opinion, do you believe that this structure will bring about the high quality instruction that's truly needed to negate this learning loss, or no?
I just to answer the question straight up, I don't think that's ideal. I don't see how. Essentially, you're trying to ask people to be in two places at once. How do you focus your full attention on the students right in front of you and students through your virtual platform? I think that's really challenging. But this whole pandemic has been challenging, and teachers have stepped up and find innovative ways to manage through it, right? And I think the first thing that needs to be said is that, for all the, I think, shade that's been thrown on virtual learning, there was a lot of great things that came out of it, and teachers that were really good at it and found some pretty cool ways to reach students that didn't exist before. And so I think to the question earlier, I think it ought to continue in some degree. Maybe not more as a supplementary piece, but there were some good things that honestly were, for the most part, figured out by teachers who just had to innovate, right? There was no direction necessarily saying, oh, here's how we do virtual learning in a pandemic. Like, no one knew that. So it was like, let's figure it out and share what we've learned. So I just want to make sure that I have seen some really great examples of good virtual learning, but I think this hybrid, like where you're trying to do both at the same time, doesn't really work. And I think you ought to either do the virtual, keep rocking that, or you should be focusing on in-person and addressing the gaps that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Miska, I see you shaking your head. What thoughts do you have around this?
So I was just talking about the idea of still being able to use technology as a part of the platform for learning. And that is one of the things, actually going back to those ESSER 2.0 dollars, that we want to make sure that digital platforms and technology, as well as some technology PD, is used for those dollars so that teachers can become better. And honestly, to Michael's point, there's some virtual teaching that's happening that I've been a part of. I've seen when I visited, virtual classrooms, it's happening. So to all of the shade, using what Michael said, that's been put out there, there are some teachers that are really mastering the virtual world. So I don't want that to go unrecognized. But I do think this is an opportunity for us to build off of it versus just saying it has to be a particular way. So that is hopefully a part of the final part of the ESSA 2.0 dollars.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And so this last question in this segment, before we move on to topic number 2, actually goes to the both of you, and you guys can feel free to jump in. As elected officials, what is being done to gain public trust as a majority of our parents and students have selected to continue with remote learning? And so in reference in regards to safety, what is being done or should be done to put parents' mind at ease to let them know that their students are safe to return to in-person learning? And so we can start with Michael.
This is where I think I push parents around asking questions.
Go ahead, Miska. I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries. Thank you. This is where I think it's really important for parental involvement around taking the opportunity to connect with their principals. And I'm only speaking really particular for my district because these are the conversations I've had with principals. And one principal in particular, who is a middle school who will be opening tomorrow, made the statement that he did several kind of town hall, if you wills, around his school. And he started off knowing that he would have a lot of questions. He knew going in because he understands his parents and he understands his school community. But within his presentation, I think he told me he had 75 slides. So that's how thorough he went in. And he started from point 1 and went on down to 75. And when he was finished, he was like, okay, is Q&A here? I'm ready. Let's talk about it. And parents were like, oh no, you pretty much touched every point that I had. And I think that's really important, that's how you build trust around what all of this looks like, because principals are the front line, then teachers are their support. Then teachers are the front line and principals are their support. So you have to be able to have the buy-in from both. And parents sometimes, because some school buildings are not as welcoming as they should be. So my conversation is making sure that parents can connect to whomever, whenever, especially if anyone calls me, reaches out to me, I'm a connector. So I make sure that they get to the right person so that they can feel more comfortable around their school community. And then the other aspect of it is, I think as elected officials, is ask the right questions. Being able to say, hey, are we good on this? Are we, if that's not working, being able to come back to the page and say, well, we know that we can improve on this, so this is what we'll do differently.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Michael, what are your thoughts around this?
Well, just to build off what Miska was saying, I think, the number one thing is ensuring clarity with the community and with families and parents, that they clearly understand all the preparations that are being done, all the things that if this happens, that happens. I think that's something that everyone really deserves and needs to know and feel comfortable with, if they know what's to be expected and what it's going to look like. And I think once they then see that and feel like, hey, we're actually doing what we say we're going to do, that they would potentially feel more comfortable. So it's really incumbent upon anyone who's involved, whether it's the elected officials or district leaders or community leaders, to just reinforce that here are the plans that are in place to make sure that your student, your teachers are taken care of and feel safe and are getting a good experience. To the point of asking questions too, I think it's one of the questions we also need to ask is who's coming back and who's not, and is it broken down by a certain demographic, a certain part of the county?
Correct.
I think it's important to whereas I got a lot of emails from constituents saying I want an in-person option, right? Like I want to go back. But that might not be the case in Miska's district, and that needs to be acknowledged. And we need to ensure that we are addressing everyone's concerns, and not just the ones we hear directly, but that we're asking questions about how things are going outside of our particular areas. So that'd be one question I would want to ask in the coming days and weeks as students continue to start coming back, is who's here and who's not, and how do we help ensure that we're going out there in the community, making everyone feel welcome and safe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great points that both of you made. Now we are going to jump into topic number 2. So I'm going to toss it over to James for standardized testing during a global pandemic.
Woo! Everyone's favorite topic, state testing. Woo! All right, so like I said, we're the Teachers Lounge, so nothing is off limits. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. So Miska, I'm going to start with you. So in your opinion, is it fair to give standardized tests when this school year has been nothing but standardized?
Absolutely not. The board last meeting signed a resolution saying as a board that we were going to lobby at the state level about this not being able to be held harmless and just whatever we could do so that testing won't happen. But the reality of it is we need our counterparts in Middle and East Tennessee to buy into it as well. And oftentimes that's where things fall flat. So when I think of Michael and his work with Lee, that's where we need additional support and being able to, lobby other state elected officials around, bringing them along to understand that West Tennessee is a little different than Middle and East Tennessee. So in my opinion, absolutely not. The board as a collective already decided to, push a resolution and that we would lobby against this, but it takes more than just us. We need help from Middle and East Tennessee in order for this to be a fact.
All right, yeah, thank you for bubbling that up. And like you said, it's not fair for Memphis to be the only district or the school districts to be fighting for equity and to make sure that our students and our teachers are being treated fairly. People on all sides of the aisle, like you mentioned, Middle Tennessee and East Tennessee have to step up to the plate because at the end of the day, the students are the ones who are really being impacted. And in my opinion, it's not being impacted in a great way. So that leads me to my second question, which you already know, and Brittany kind of bubbled this up as well. Teachers are teaching students in person and of course, remotely in a hybrid model. So this is a question that a lot of teachers, they said, James, I need you to ask this question. And I said, I got you. So on a lot of teachers' minds is, will students well, first of all, what will testing look like this spring? So we know that it's not going to count, but through a lot of these bills, and I know, Bill Lee, he had a strong backing, bring them back so we can get some data. Number one, what will this data be used for? What will logistics look like for testing to get some data back from our students? And then what will happen if those students who selected virtual learning decide that they're not coming in the building to test? So what would that look like? Will teachers, students, and principals, will they be held responsible for that? So what will testing look like this spring? And if parents decide who chose virtual learning that, you know what, it's not safe, I'm not bringing my kid back to the building. What would that look like and who is held accountable? Will teachers, students, and principals be held accountable if they don't show up to meet that 80% benchmark that has been set?
Excellent question, James. I think this is the thing around when you're working with state legislators around how they make bills happen very quickly. And also within those bills, the things inside them change. So we are actually currently right now working with our lobbyists around making sure that we probably can have some waivers and what it looks like, because those are actually our questions as a board, understanding the fact that if you're going to tie our funding to this, so it really is not the teachers and the families or the schools per se that will be held liable. It's the district as a whole is what they're saying, is that if you don't meet the metrics, then you won't get the funding that you normally would get or that you need in order for that to happen. So the beauty of having a really great lobbyist is that we're able to kind of, push things in a different way. And we're still waiting to see how some of those questions will be answered. The other aspect of it is some, I myself included asked the question, and some board members and myself included asked the question around, well, what does it look like to have, an extended testing period? Since if you're saying we have to have 80% take the test, then what does it look like to have an extending testing period so that you could map out the fact that you won't have all students on the same day in the building at the same time taking the test? So then let's be innovative and creative about it. If that's what you want us to do, that can't happen in just a small time window. So those are some of the things that we're asking, and those are some of the things we hope to have answers soon around it, because state, they went into session in January. They normally end in April. And right now it's a lot of push. Things happen and change at the last minute. So we're really hoping that some of those changes happen for us at the last minute.
That's excellent. And I'm glad that you guys are thinking about some of those things, because a lot of teachers are like, what is this going to look like? You know, and as you mentioned and basically said in a nutshell, it's complicated. And the plan is not going to happen overnight.
Right.
These waivers have to be filed. Decisions have to be made,
Mm-hmm.
but it does. I know for a fact, I know some of the elected officials who are working hard behind the scenes. You know, parents have to continue to fight on that state level, because it seems like we do one thing in Memphis and the state legislature has a completely different agenda, but that's another conversation for another day. So my last question as it relates to state testing, and standardized tests during the global pandemic is this one. So the argument, or one of the arguments, which is why the state legislature pushed for this in-person return, is that we need data to quantify the learning loss that took place with our students during this pandemic. My question to you, last question on this, is how will the data be used, and will it be included in teacher summative evaluations, right? So we know that a big portion of how teachers are measured in terms of their performance is based on that student data. Mm-hmm. So teachers have been asking me questions, James, is this going to affect my teacher pay? Look, I'm a level 4, level 5 teacher. Like, am I going to be able to get a pay raise next year? And also those teachers who are up for tenure, or who may be on probation and they don't know if they're going to be able to return back to their school or not. How will this impact those teachers, and will data be used in the teacher summative evaluations for this upcoming school year? For this school year?
I mean, teachers are asking the right questions, and those are some of the things that as a board we have been lobbying against and pushing and saying, when we did the thing around standardized testing, there of course were a lot of questions around teachers that we were pushing, saying none of this is fair to, teachers, it's not fair to students, it's not fair to the district. So again, those are some of the things that we're pushing our lobbyists around. The other piece of it is, anytime people come to you and say they need the data, in their minds, they're thinking about it as a punitive action. And that's always in my personal point of view, around being careful around what that looks like. I know you need something in order to just kind of do an assessment and see where we are across the state. Totally understand and get that. But when you use it in a punitive way, no one wins with that. So that is also something that we've been pushing our lobbyists and other people in the Shelby delegation who've been extremely helpful. I would say that around making sure that Shelby is protected. It's just unfortunate, though, that the Shelby delegation is not enough. So that's why, we work with our lobbyists to bring Middle Tennessee and East Tennessee along the way. So then that way we can have some support to be able to stop some of these bills that really are targeted just towards Shelby.
You're right about that. And it's one thing to ask for data, but why do you want the data if a lot of the data that we have isn't even reliable? Is it valid because of the conditions, even the common assessment data that kids took in the fall? They took it at home. Mm-hmm. Some of the kids asked for it. Some of the kids like I had to look up, or my laptop went out, my internet went out. That's another conversation that we can dive to. So we don't have all day, but of course, these are conversations that need to continue. And as you said, teachers to ask these questions, not only just from school board, but your state elected officials as well. So Brittany, I know that you have some questions for Michael Whaley, so I'm going to toss it over to you.
I do have a burning question for Michael. Thank you, James. So some districts have elected to continue with teacher evaluations this year, as we've discussed, amid the pandemic and remote learning. However, those ratings won't count for or against the trajectory of the teacher's career in some states. One principal stated that there's too much stress to base student achievement and evaluations from whether or not parents are supporting learning at home. Other districts have shifted their model of feedback from formal evaluations to informal virtual learning walks. This includes looking at practices that support virtual organization and classroom spaces, how a teacher is supporting students socially and emotionally, and how student participation is being encouraged. So, in your opinion, Michael, do you believe that our district should also make this shift in lieu of the TIM formal evaluation rubric?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, Brittany, you made a point earlier around how, some of the old, or the teacher the sort of traditional evaluation tools were old tools. They were developed well before COVID and everything that's happened in the last year. And so, yeah, you can do that because that's what you've got on the shelf, but I'm not sure that actually gives you the data that anyone would want to decide how to move forward because of all those variables you mentioned, because you have different levels of support at home, you have different levels of connectivity. It's just hard to get a full gauge of that. But I do think, to your point, you can come up with different and innovative ways that are actually evaluating what teachers are currently doing that can not only provide feedback and development, but I think uncover some really great things that have been going on when everyone's been talking about other stuff. So I think it's important to have something because for nothing else, it helps you highlight those things that are working really well, right? Like, wouldn't you want, if you were the one that came up with something really awesome with your virtual learning, I think, wouldn't you want to be able to share that or get recognition for that? And vice versa, if you were really trying to come up with some solution for a challenge that we've all been facing, it would be great to be able to hear that from someone else or have a way to get that feedback shared. So, to the extent it's possible, and I don't know the details of whether the district can do it or not, but to the extent it's possible to have a new tool created that is more in line with what's actually going on, that can better not only recognize some of the things teachers are doing, but provide the support in this current environment, I think I'd be all for that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So my last question, and I know Miska touched a little bit on teacher evaluations, but Michael, for you, so there's 3 states that are not requiring summative teacher evaluations this school year: Illinois, Mississippi, and New Mexico. In your opinion, do you believe that summative evaluations should be required in Tennessee?
Well, I mean, I probably would just say, kind of building off of the last question, that not in the traditional sense of, did you do all these things like you would in a normal school year? Because I'm not sure how beneficial that would be. But yeah, sure, if it's got these new tools and it's something that I think is in line with the reality of this last year. And quite frankly, we've had a lot of time to kind of come up with those tools, that my hope would have been the state or others would have alternative summative evaluation tools that could be used that would be more appropriate given what we've seen over the last year. Because the challenge, if you don't do that, is that you have too many variables that are outside of the teacher's locus of control. And so to apply the traditional evaluation model isn't going to be very effective, I don't think. So I do think there should be something, but it needs to be more aligned with the reality on the ground.
Absolutely. I agree. Thank you so much for that. And so that wraps up this segment for us. Thank you guys, Michael and Miska, for such thought-provoking questions and challenges and probes and pushes for us around these topics. We know that this is a hot topic and everyone around the globe is talking about this. So, James?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Brittany said. Thank you guys for coming on the show tonight, coming to the Teachers Lounge. A lot of folks are intimidated to come inside the Teachers Lounge, but you guys didn't break a sweat. Y'all didn't stutter. You kept it going. You kept it flowing. And I know our viewers are going to appreciate the sincere and authentic responses that you gave, and also just letting them know that the work that you're currently doing, right? I think sometimes a lot of elected officials don't get the credit they deserve. And I do believe that you both are working very hard to ensure that our kids have what they need during this difficult time. So thank y'all for coming on to the Teachers Lounge. It is, really appreciated.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I was told there was going to be snacks in the Teachers Lounge. So maybe next time.
Hey, wait a minute, no.
I don't know.
There was some snacks. The snacks were the topics, and we ate all stuff today. We ate up.
I'm awfully full.
We ate up testing during the global pandemic. We ate it up. So yeah, we have plenty of food. Look,
he needs some milk.
Oh my goodness. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure talking with both of you guys. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
All right, y'all have a good night.
Thank you,
Thanks,
James.
y'all.
Thank you,
too.
Brittany.
All right,
Thank y'all.
Thank you. All right, guys. So it is time for our next segment, which is the principal's list.
Whoop, whoop, principals list. It was so hard to make the principals list. So I'm excited to see who made the list because it's hard to make the principals list, Brittany.
Yes. You want to make the principal's list and not be in the principal's office. There's a difference. I strive to be on the principal's list, stay out of the principal's office. And so during this segment, this is where we get to share some good news, especially with everything going on. We're honored that we get to recognize educators in our community, especially with everything that's going on and nationwide that are doing some incredible work inside and outside of our schools. This month, I have the honor of recognizing the amazing Brennan Steele and the innovative work that he's doing. And so let's give him a round of applause as we welcome Brennan in. Hi, Brennan.
Hey.
Hi. So for those of you that don't know, Brennan is a 2018 TFA Memphis alum that recently published Breathe, a guided healing journal for Black men, in which he offers this space for Black men to reclaim their own story, reflect on their identity, and promote mental health and wellness. He's an author, he's an educator, and a founder of the Breathe Brother movement. He currently serves as a founding 7th grade math teacher and content lead at Believe Memphis Academy. Specifically tonight, we're honoring Brennan for his work with Breathe Brother and this awareness of Black men's health, Black men's mental health that he has raised. So thank you, Brennan, so much for taking the time to be with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So my first question that I have for you is, how did you feel when you heard that you were receiving this award?
Man, I was definitely honored. I think it's funny. Growing up, I always strived to be on the principal's list. My mama always made sure I was on it. And so I think in this sense, oh, what's up, Ben? In this sense, I think I was just, I don't know, I've been working, grinding on it for a little bit since mid 2020. And so it's cool to be recognized for it.
Thank you. Yes, that's awesome. Awesome. So tell us just a little bit more about yourself. What else should the audience know about you?
Yeah, so two things I say. I say that I am an educator of brilliant young minds, and then I'm a lover of bread is the second thing. But then outside of that, I've been a writer in support of transformed lives. And so I think everything that I do is connected, even in the Black male mental health space. I see it so much connected to what I do in education every day. I think outside of that, I'm really from Nashville, and I went to Duke University. Studied.
Okay.
I studied African American Studies and History, and also a minor in education. So that's a little bit about me. I am slowly becoming a Memphis. I'm slowly liking Memphis more than I like Nashville. So y'all are converting me.
Yeah. So you're a Memphis transplant, which means that now we have the rights to you. We can.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. So now let's get into your work. Can you tell us a little bit more about this Breathe Brother movement and this need to have a focus on Black men's mental health? How did this come about? What birthed this vision for you?
Yeah. So I think right after we shut down because of COVID, I think it just kind of threw a lot of educators into this whirlwind. It's like, what do I do every day now? I mean, I'm still teaching, but it's not to the extent that I would do in person. I think in addition to that, you had the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and so many others throughout the rest of the summer. And I just found like myself just in a mental space that wasn't really conducive to my flourishing. And I've been in counseling for a couple years at this point, and I was thinking about all of my brothers who didn't have the same career. And so I decided to write this journal as a resource for them, just to kind of offer space for healing, offer space for reflection, and really just create something for Black men, made by Black men. So that's kind of like the inspiration.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. And so, and I know you touched a little bit about it just now, but why is this work so important at such a time as this? And what do you really see as the impact of this work that you're doing?
Yeah, I think COVID kind of slowed a lot of things down for everybody, and it's still kind of slowing us down in terms of our relational connections. I know I don't see nearly as many people as I used to. So it's making us deal with ourselves more than we want to, and realizing some of the issues and wounds and trauma that we haven't dealt with. And so I think there is a beauty in journaling, a beauty in having something that's your journey, particularly in the moment we're in. And so I think that's what the vision is, and I hope the impact is that this becomes the start of a journey of healing for those who participate, who write in it. I always say it's the start. I'm not saying after the finishing the journal, you're healed, you're completely better. Like, I wanting to catalyze your journey. So whether that's going to counseling, whether that's investing in self-care, whatever it is, I hope that impact is there. Like I said, like, lives will be transformed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I definitely believe that this work is going to do absolutely just that, transform lives. So tell us about what can local and even national schools do to get connected and plugged into your work?
Yeah, so I think there's two ways that you can think about it. I think about from the student lens. I feel the journal is probably suitable for high schoolers and up. So I've had kind of people reach out to me, let me know that like their 56-year-old son is going through it. At the same time that I have 50 and 60-year-old men going through it. So I think that I know that there are some, I've been making partnerships with some high schools in Memphis that are purchasing it for their freshman academy or just parts of their school to kind of support the social emotional learning aspects of their experience. And so I think that's one way you can think about it in terms of students. Another thing is that I think about the fact that 2% of educators are Black men. So this is a very lonely profession for Black men, and I think that like even offering this as like a resource for your Black male teachers could be very impactful as well.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that this book specifically targets maybe high school students and up, but what about some elementary and middle school students of teachers, or elementary and middle school teachers of students that say if there's one piece of advice that maybe you can give from your book that they can use for their students, what would that be?
Yeah, I think one thing that men have to do as they go through the journal is identify their emotion every single day. And so I think there's so much power in being able to name how you're feeling. So I do that. We do that with our kids at Believe. Is like we have them at least once a week tell us how they feel. And I think specifically for Black boys, elementary, middle school boys, that's right when those like toxic ideas of masculinity, those ideas where men don't emote, men don't have feelings except for anger or excitement. That's where those start to develop. And so if you can start to create space for your boys to start to say, I feel sad, I feel alone, I feel whatever way, super young, that can start to prevent some of the things that I'm trying to restore through the journal so far. So I think that's something that I would share with elementary and middle school students and teachers.
Yeah, that's really dope. That's really dope, and that's really great advice that I think is universal for everyone. So thank you so much. Okay, so last question: how can any and everyone get plugged into your work, purchase your work, follow you on social media? What can they do?
Yeah, so the journal is available on Amazon, bookstores everywhere. Honestly, the more it's out, the more bookstores get it. I think I saw it on Walmart at one point. I didn't even put it over there. So, but it's available primarily on Amazon. But you can find all information about the journal, the movement, other things we have going on through our social media. It's at Breed Brother on Instagram and Facebook. So both of those pages you can like, follow, and you can keep up with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We are truly honored to have you with us tonight. Thank you for all the amazing and innovative work that you're doing for Black brothers of color out here. So thank you so much, Brennan.
Thank you for having me.
Wow. So this wraps up our Principals List segment. James, that was phenomenal. And so now I'm going to turn it over to you for our pop quiz.
All right. Y'all heard the bell, and y'all know what that means. It's transition time and transitioning into a pop quiz. So, look, we know when we were in school, you got to pay attention because you never know when the teacher might pull a fast one on you. So we do have a pop quiz for our audience members in the audience. And if you've been paying attention, we have some lovely, wonderful prizes for you. So the first question for those audience members on tonight, all right? We want you to, I'm going to read the question, and I want you to put the correct answer in the chat. And if it is correct, we are going to elevate your response and show you some of the things that you're going to win. So are you ready? All right, here we go. All right. So the first question is this one. All right. Who is the new U.S. Secretary of Education? Once again, who is the new U.S. Secretary of Education? Put your responses in the chat. First person with the correct answer will get some TFA swag. All right. So let's see. Let's see who's paying attention in class. All right. So who is the new U.S. Secretary of Education? Drop those responses in the chat to get some wonderful prizes. And look now, we got some tablets, we got t-shirts, we got stunner shades. And if y'all don't want it, I can definitely keep it on. Look, summer is coming, spring is coming. And look.
Okay.
This look good on me. I like these. All right, and Ben Wilkins, Miguel Cardona, woo! Yeah. All right, Ben, look at you. Okay, look, you're gonna be in the principals next month the way you respond to these questions. So, Ben, what you need to do, can you drop your email in the chat and we are gonna get to you so we can give you some goodies. We got a tablet. We also have a wonderful book for you. I already put on the stunning shade, so you know what that looks like. We have a lovely water bottle, and we have a wonderful collective shirt. Everyone loves shirts. All right, so Brittany, hit him up with that second question.
Okay, second question. Name one area of focus SES officials would like to invest in with this second round of federal stimulus money. Name one area of focus that SES officials, so Miska told us a lot of different things that they want to invest this money in.
You did.
Plus one that they want to invest in this second round of federal stimulus money. Drop those responses in the chat.
All right, drop them apples.
We're looking for the first one.
First one with the correct answer. Now, Ramon Williams, you don't count. You work for TFA. All right, I think we have someone. Okay, they're about to elevate it up. All right. Who is it? Yay! Allie Bounds, updating buildings. Yes, because they do need some updating. So, yes, that is one of the priorities that Miska talked about. that they want to invest in that $170 million. Because I was like, look, if y'all don't know what you want to do with it, I got some things we can do with it. So yes. Excellent. And we have one more giveaway for tonight. So
thanks for the shout out, Ben.
Yes, Ben said thanks for this programming, y'all. Shout out to
the production team, Eminem Production.
When I tell you Eminem Production came through, Eminem and no, like not Eminem, but Marvin Thomas, Mainly Pal, Eminem Productions. Y'all better ask about them. You better hire them, okay? Look, because they didn't play tonight. We have one last question, one last pop quiz question for those folks in the audience on tonight. Now, well, actually, we don't have a question. We have, are you following our Instagram page? Are you following us on Facebook? So these are the things. I'm gonna name it real quick, then we're gonna select somebody, all right? So for this last prize, all of them are the same prizes, all those goodies. You have to be following us on our Facebook page at The Collective MEM. You need to be following us on Instagram at The Collective MEM, or following us on our The Teachers Edition on Instagram as well. So Marvin, let's give about 30 seconds for those folks in the audience who are not following us on social media the opportunity so we can go ahead and bubble up the last prize to the last person in the audience. So put on some good music. Let's play a little jam as we give 30 seconds for those folks who haven't already done so to follow us on social media. All right, so that DJ, some Eminem Production, y'all, doing all things, making all things possible. I'm like, wait a minute, look. Hey, okay. Brittany, what you know about that, Brittany? Hey. 20 more seconds to put your answer in the chat. If you don't do it, we ain't coming back. Better do it right now. Better put the response in, because if you don't do it, then you ain't gonna win. Right? We gonna do it. That a mic. Eminem Production on the mic. I'm done. I can't do it right. No, I ain't saying that. The Brittany, no. Just coming through. Freestyle.
Always
trying to get on my Archie Moss, who was a wonderful principal at Bruce Elementary. If you haven't checked it out, check out Computer Love, our TFA alum. All right, so we're gonna wrap up. So if you are not following us, make sure to follow us at The Collective MEM, the Teacher Edition on Instagram and also Facebook. And we're gonna bubble that person who is going to win this last prize. All right, so Eminem Production, give us a name. Hey, because we like to party. Educators like to party too. I can't wait because let me not go into too much, but look, educators like to have fun. Can't do too much right now, but when this pandemic goes away, it's on and popping. All right. So let's see here. Eminem Production. All right. So with that being said, we are going to go ahead and conclude everything on tonight. Give us 1 second really quickly. All right. So we're going to go ahead and conclude on tonight. We're going to end tonight with our extra credit assignment. So there's no new folks that have followed us on today. So that's okay, because we're going to give more folks an opportunity on next month. So we're going to go ahead and move to the last segment of this evening, which is around extra credit. And I know y'all are like, wait a minute. Now, James, y'all just gave us a pop quiz. Now you're going to give us extra credit? The answer is absolutely. We're giving you some extra credit on tonight. So for us, this segment of extra credit is basically a call to action, right? What are some things that you can do? We talked about a lot of different things tonight. So what are some things that you can do, whether you're an educator, specifically those folks who are not in education? Because I always stress this point, and that is either you teach kids directly or you support those that do. So even if you're not in the building, if you're a parent, if you're a stakeholder, if you're a person that just wants to make a difference, you can do that. So here are 2 things that you can do to make a difference in the lives of our students. So as many of you know, Elementary students for SCS returned back last week, and our middle and high school students are returning this week, tomorrow. One of the things that you can do, I don't know if you guys heard, but the National Random Acts of Kindness Month was last month, the whole month of February. So one of the things that you can do is you can show love to your folks, your neighborhood schools, right? You don't have to have a child in a school to make a difference. So what can that look like? Dropping off supplies, dropping off just different instructional materials that our teachers need to be successful, right? Drop it out for the school directly. If you want to know more specifically what teachers need, pull up at the school, ask those teachers, and I promise you there's going to be a plethora of different things that they will need to support them during this difficult time. And then the second thing, there's actually three things. The second extra credit assignment that we're going to follow up on next month, as Miska talked about, parents, also stakeholders, reach out to your school-based leadership. Also reach out to your elected officials. Ask the hard questions, right? There's not a question that is dumb. There's not a question that is good. The only bad question is the one that is not asked, okay? So if you are a parent, if you are a stakeholder in community, you have the right to ask questions. So ask questions around what is going on, because not only is that going to push school leadership, teachers, elected officials, but the plan will be comprehensive so that it has all eyes and all interests vested into it. And then last but not least, I know that this one is one that a lot of folks are thinking about, but if you are a parent or a community stakeholder, bring together different groups, bring together different folks and form a committee, and let's begin flushing out how teachers, how principals, how students, even for that matter, nonprofits, how these different groups can come together and start reimagining what education will look like for this upcoming school year and beyond. Education has changed forever. I know a lot of folks keep saying, when are we going to go back to the new normal? We are in the normal right now, and that is the present moment in time. So let's start coming together to plan for what we have learned and experienced this year, how we're taking these wins as well as opportunities for growth, and really using this qualitative and quantitative data and coming up with a good plan for our students for this upcoming school year. So once again, you can donate items to the school. You can reach out to your school leadership and state elected officials. And then lastly, start forming committees so that we all can come together and imagine a world of education that is bright for all of our kids, because our students so deserve it. With that being said, we're going to get ready to close out. It has been an extreme pleasure on tonight. You guys have literally filled my cup. I know Michael Whaley said, I heard that there were snacks in the teacher's lounge. Look, I'm full. We have chewed, we have chat, we have had conversations around everything. And I would like to say we appreciate every single person who tuned in and logged in to join this much needed conversation. If you haven't already done so, make sure to follow us on Facebook at The Collective MEM. Make sure you are following us on Instagram as well at The Collective MEM, and also on Instagram at The Teacher Edition. We're going to see you all next month on April the 4th, same time, same place, first Sunday, 6 p.m. CST time. Thank you all again, and good night. The Teacher Edition show. Yeah, with the music. Eminem production. Oh yeah, one last shout out. Eminem production. If y'all don't know him, Maley Powell, Marvin Thomas, we literally have the best production team down south. When I tell you I ain't biased, I'm just telling you what it is. Give a shout out to them if you can in the chat. We Eminem Production, the best production team possible. So we could not have done this, and this could not have been possible without our wonderful production team. So we do want to thank them as well. So first episode of Teacher Edition. We can't wait to see y'all next month.